Welcome, everybody, to Inside Boxing Weekly live on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. Inside Boxing Weekly is brought to you by MyBookie.ag. All you got to do to get to MyBookie.ag is to go to the Grueling Truth website, click on the MyBookie.ag banner. It'll take you right there. Bet the NCAA tournament, bet Wilder or Ortiz next week. So make sure you go to MyBookie.ag. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I want to welcome in my co-host. First up, Jeremiah Preisser.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank everybody who's tuning in right now. Thank you for listening, and I bet John's going to throw some money down on next weekend's fight, huh?
And of course,
get ready for that.
Don't talk till you're introduced. Come on, you know better than that by now. And, and next up, of course, John Einreinhofer.
Good to be here now that I've been officially introduced.
Okay. Well, it's got to be official. I mean, you couldn't just walk out onto the Johnny Carson show without Johnny, introducing you.
That's true.
All right, so I think we saw what may have been the fight of the year so far, but there hadn't been that many great fights this year. Rungvisai beats Estrada. What was your take on the decision, John?
I saw Rungvisai won it clearly. I had him, I believe, winning by 4 points. Estrada did rally some like he did against Quadras, and it was an exciting last round. But saw Rungvisai just controlled too much of the fight. I can't see the draw score myself. I saw a couple people had the draw. I don't see it. I thought it was a clear win for Sor Rungvisai. So I think, two of the judges basically got it right. I personally thought the draw was a little more off than that one card that had Sor Rungvisai winning it by more points. It was a really good fight. I personally preferred Gassiev and Dorticos a bit more. I think as good of a puncher as Sor Rungvisai is, I think what some fans need to realize when they're watching fighters at this low of a weight, despite Sor Rungvisai's KO percentage and what he did to Gonzalez in the last fight, while that can happen with a good puncher in the lower weights, these are not even welterweights banging away like that when they're firing away. It's not the same level of danger like a welterweight or a middle or a light heavyweight, or of course a heavyweight. And while it was a really good fight, I just think keep that in mind when they exchange like that. It's not that kind of power going back and forth.
Okay, Jeremiah.
Yeah, I had Rungvisai winning 7-5. I thought he looked, it was a bit like the Gonzalez fight where it just looked as if Rungvisai was the boss. I mean, you could tell that Estrada was reacting more so to what Rungvisai was doing than vice versa. So you could see that Estrada, for as good as he is, and you look at his resume, he's been in a good number of scraps. And go back to the fight a few years back when he fought Roman Gonzalez, he seemed less weary of the power in every other fight that I've seen. In fact, that's what it kind of reminded me of is when Roman Gonzalez fought Rungvisai, you could see that he had a healthy dose of respect for Rungvisai's physicality, for his punching power. And I also saw that with Estrada, and that's why you saw he was pecking and poking a lot in the first few rounds where he was trying to touch him with the right hand as opposed to committing with it. And I think that ultimately hurt him in the end because he wasn't getting Rungvisai's respect. Though I did think he stunned him pretty good. What was it, in the second or third round? But he just wasn't doing enough of it. He was just doing too much touching, whereas Rungvisai was letting Estrada work. And then he would counterpunch, or he would bang to the body. And even though Rungvisai lacks, a lot of technical ability, all he has to do is touch you, and you feel it. And I think that's part of what caused Estrada not to be so strong down the stretch as well, is that, Rungvisai's, again, his physical prowess, the weight of his punches, the fact that he throws a lot of good body punches, it was just a little too much for Estrada, and he just seemed a little too weary. And it was a bit unfortunate that he decided to turn it on, really turn it on in the last round. I mean, it was a fun round. I do think it's a candidate for Fight of the Year. Is it number one so far? I'm not exactly sure, but it was a damn good fight. And I should mention, again, we're not big proponents of 17 weight classes on this show, but it was for the 115-pound championship of the world. That's notable. Forget the WBC stuff attached to it. It was a damn good fight. We should get more of this. I mean, promoters need to stand up and take notice that this kind of stuff does good business. And kudos to Tom Loeffler as well, because this is his brainchild. He did the Superfly. It went over really well. This one, I think, went over really well. And I'm excited to see another one. I hear that Loeffler may do more of them.
Yeah, and where do you think Rung Visai goes from here? Do you think we see a rematch with Estrada, McWilliams Arroyo, who we'll talk about here in a minute? There's a lot of guys in around this weight range that make for good fights with Rung Visai.
Yeah, I agree. I would like to see Arroyo. I actually think that would be a pretty fun fight because they're both big bangers. Arroyo doesn't seem to have the whiskers that Rung Visai does, but the fact that he has a strong amateur background, and they talk going into I'll come back to this when we talk about the Arroyo fight, but they talk about his 3 losses, but you look at him, he was competitive against Gonzalez, he lost a split decision against Amnat Ruamrung, so this is a high caliber fighter. So I just think their styles mesh really well. It'd be fun while it lasts. I do think that would end in knockout. The unfortunate bit, however, is I was hoping that the winner of this fight would get Inoue. And the fact that that's not happening is it may become a tragedy because these are the sort of fights that we need to see. And with Inoue, I'm not accusing Inoue of ducking anybody, but with his weight hopping and belt snatching, it just becomes a bit monotonous over time, especially when Rung Visai is one of the pound for pound best in the sport, and now he's a true champion. But yeah, I think Arroyo would be a good fight. An Estrada rematch wouldn't be too bad. He should probably stay away from the slicker fighters somebody has to chase down. But Arroyo, I think, is a good one, and I think it's natural since they're both on the same card.
All right, and we'll go ahead and we'll talk. Or first, I want to get John's opinion on that. John, where do you think he should go?
Well, I myself, I agree with Jeremiah. I think you look at the reality of a lot of people, looking at 17 divisions. It's good that the Ring and Transnational were looking at this as a 15-pound title fight between the 1 and 2 guys. So, but with that out of the way and acknowledged, my initial thought when I saw Rung Visai controlling, the first 3 quarters of the fight was, if you forget the alphabet belt stuff, I mean, maybe him going up and fighting Inoue, since Inoue had made one appearance on HBO. Might be the fight I would prefer, have him getting up into the traditional division since he's made a name for himself now in these 2 fights with Gonzalez and the fight here with Estrada. But then, when I heard of course you had a pro Estrada crowd there in Los Angeles, but when you hear the booing of the crowd and some people had it a draw, I'm thinking we're going to see this again. It was a good fight. Of course, it's not a fight you would mind necessarily seeing again because it was a good fight, but I might like to see something different with Rung Visai moving up those other 3 pounds. He's 31 years old, and no matter what kind of role he's on now, you just don't have that kind of a fighter career lifespan at the ages in the 30s in those lower divisions.
Especially the style he fights at, John. Especially the style.
Especially with that. Yeah. Right, especially with that style. So I'm looking at him as a short future shelf life as well as he's fighting right now. So I'd like to see him, make a move. I got a gut feeling the way it was talked about afterward, we're going to see this one again. I kind of would prefer to maybe see something a little different, him at bantamweight, but I don't think we're gonna get that. We'll see. I mean, you got that Luis Neri Yamanaka rematch coming up. Neri had the positive PED test, which the WBC kind of reversed their own clean drug problem, just kind of ignored it.
He's Mexican, so.
You're right. You have a rematch with Yamanaka. So, fairness would fairness, would want you almost to see Yamanaka win that. But he, as I just stated, he's a guy who is in his mid-30s in that division, and it's probably going to be extremely difficult for him to rebound after getting knocked out by a guy on PEDs when he's in his mid-30s in a rematch. So I'm assuming Neri's probably going to win that. Just thinking that since that's also a WBC thing, I don't care about these alphabets, but the way the politics go, sometimes then that wouldn't be that hard of a jump for maybe Sorong Visai to get that fight. But I don't know exactly what Neri's promotional ties are, to tell you the truth. And in boxing, that means everything.
Yeah, and I actually think the Neri fight would be a good styles matchup for him. And another one that I think is natural, real quick, that I want to put in there is Ancawas. I think that would be a huge Southeastern Asian fight. Ancawas is a technical southpaw. I think he poses an interesting styles matchup for him. So Neri and Ancawas, I think, are good additions as well.
All right, and to talk about another addition that we got tonight was McWilliams Arroyo. Won a majority decision. I thought he clearly beat Quadras. And, of course, Dan Rafael made a fool out of himself by claiming that Quadras won 98-92. What was your take on Arroyo, Jeremiah? To me, I mean, he controlled the fight. He made Quadras fight the kind of fight he wanted him to fight.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, Arroyo, again, I've tried to stand up and take notice and do my homework on these little guys because, after it's happened in the past, but sometimes we get complacent with these things and we're like, oh, it's another Thai fighter. We'll expect him to be tough and competitive, but ultimately he'll fall. Well, after watching Rung Visai starch Roman Gonzalez, I've learned to get better with this sort of stuff. And Arroyo's actually a guy I've seen a few times because not only did he have a long amateur background, but I've seen his brother fight a few times as well. And there's an interesting styles variance there where, the one brother is more of a boxer mover and is not really a big puncher. And, this one, the one we saw against Quadras, he's more slow-handed. He's still technical, but he's a big banger. But yeah, I agree. I mean, Quadras, almost right out of the gate, it looked as if Arroyo was the man. I mean, he came out, he hurt Quadras a few times. In fact, I thought Quadras was hurt about 3/4 of the entirety of the first round. I mean, he cracked him numerous times, but Quadras is one of those guys who, to his credit, has exceptional recovery ability. I mean, I've seen him. I actually watched the Quadras Rung Visai fight, and Rung Visai smashed him with a left uppercut to the solar plexus, and Quadras was clearly hurt, almost wanted to fold over, but then he was back, in about 10 seconds. But Arroyo, I thought he was a cleaner puncher. His jab was sharper. He was going to the body nicely. He just looked like the heavier handed, the sharper guy. And again, right, like you said, it was his fight. And I'm happy that they gave it to him because I was a little concerned there when they were about to announce the scorecards. I was like, 98. I don't know about all that one. I didn't really see a 98 for either guy, but if you were going to give it to somebody, Arroyo was that guy, and kudos to him. I mean, now he's another player in the 115-pound division, and I actually think that this reflects better on Roman Gonzalez's legacy now because Roman Gonzalez was able to stop him, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe that was a decision when memory bank's a little fuzzy there. But yeah, I mean, Gonzalez, Arroyo is another guy that Gonzalez overcame. So, Quadras and Arroyo, I think that, just again, it adds weight to his legacy.
Yeah, and this fight, no matter what, the funny thing is Dan Rafael's probably sitting there watching the fight, and when they said 98-92, his fat ass was
brushing.
sitting there. Yeah, his fat ass was sitting there saying, "See, I told y'all."
He's brushing Cheetos off of his shirt.
Yeah, the fight to me was similar to the Rung Visai fight, John, because I had the Rung Visai fight 7-5 for Rung Visai. I had Arroyo's 6-4 against Quadras. But the thing is, to me, they clearly won the fight, if that makes any sense. I mean, the rounds they won, I don't think could be doubted.
Well, it kind of makes sense to me because on this particular one, because I had it a draw, but I don't have any problem with the decision. So I guess I felt like you did because I actually had it a draw. I thought Quadras did just enough to get the last round, barely. and I had it a draw. But I just felt like Arroyo was the better fighter the whole night, so I didn't have any problems with the decision. I agree with Jeremiah's analysis. I perked up in the first round when I saw Arroyo hurting Quadras. And, an amazing performance by Arroyo, the best I've ever seen him fight, and coming off more than a 2-year layoff. Just don't know how he did it. And what I thought was so great, if you watch what he did in there too, is his defense was so tight. Really, when Quadras was throwing all those punches, he wasn't landing anything. I mean, and then Arroyo was coming back with good, crisp, hard shots. He was very efficient, and he just did it basically all night. And I did see a little of Abel Sanchez's influence on Quadras to cut out all that crazy jumping around, that meaningless jumping around he was always doing. But it wasn't enough because he's still not accurate enough with his punches, and he just kind of throws, and he's not accurate. You've heard me on the podcast before. I haven't. I've been consistent there. I wasn't saying that I saw this upset coming tonight. Of course, got to be straight there. But I haven't been that high on Quadras. And, I did see Abel Sanchez, to his credit, looked like he tried to get some things out of him like that, but it just wasn't enough against a motivated Arroyo who fought the best fight of his career. I think by far you could see some talent there, but he just, that was one time I did agree with Kellerman. Like, he just looked like a contender who was, not in that upper part of the pack, just on the fringes type of a guy. He was skilled. He wasn't unskilled, but he just never looked like a top of the division, upper part of the division type of guy. But he did tonight. So, he fought extremely well. He looked like the better fighter in there, but I do have to say I scored it as a draw.
All right. Hey. Next up, go ahead, Jeremiah.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but did anybody see Quadras' back acne?
Yeah, what the hell is that? Is he on steroids or something?
I honestly don't know, but I had talked about this years back because this has been a recurring thing for him. And if I'm not mistaken, it's like some fights he has it and some fights he doesn't. But he's had that sort of back acne for years. And I don't know if it's PED use, but it's disgusting.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that was a bit disturbing was it was for some sort of nonsensical WBC diamond belt, but the WBC elected not to VADA test for that fight.
I can't even believe that you brought that insignificant belt up, John.
Well, Quadras is Mexican.
It's all in the name of comedy, because Callum Smith was waving his around tonight too, and we'll get
to Callum Smith here in a minute, but now we're going to go to the flyweight portion of the card, which Dalakian, a guy who Jeremiah just wrote a piece on, pulled. I don't think it was an upset because I think Dalakian was actually a small favorite when the fight started, but he won a unanimous decision over Brian Valoria. Won the decision by 9 or 10 points, took the fight pretty easy. What was your take on him, Jeremiah?
Well, I was happy I picked that one right, because in the last paragraph of my piece, I asked if we can project enough to, give Dalakian an edge here. And, when you have a 37-year-old Brian Valoria who hasn't looked special, he didn't look special in his prime, but we can't forget, if you follow the small guys, Brian Valoria lost a split decision to Juan Francisco Estrada when Estrada was probably maybe just a bit better. I don't know. But I was impressed by him. Does he become the best in the division? It's hard to say. But the one thing that I did like was both guys were throwing a lot of power punches. Dalakian, like I say in the article, he's versatile. He could brawl a little bit. He can box a little bit. He didn't use his jab enough for my liking, which was a bit disappointing. But he threw a lot of combination punches. I thought he was clearly outworking Valoria. I thought he was clearly landing the cleaner, sharper punches. There were a few moments when Valoria caught him. I think it was in the 7th round with a really nice right hand. But Dalakian, to his credit, he showed some savvy. He was able to hold. He was able to move. He was able to hold again and weather the storm. And his legs weren't shaky for all that long, so credit to him there. I think there was another instance, maybe it was in round 9 or round 10. But Valori's always been a tough guy. He's always been able to take some good clean shots. When he took a bunch of bombs against Gonzalez, he took a lot of clean shots against Estrada. He's always been a tough guy. He took some nice wallops against Delakian as well. I mean, I think it was round 9 or 10 when the ref deducted a point from Delakian, and Delakian was he might have had his best round of the entire fight. You just saw a lot of sweat flying off Valoria's face, I don't. If either of you were listening to the broadcast, I don't know what the hell Kevin Kelly.
Oh God, I know.
I was. I don't have any hair at the moment.
I think he had Valoria winning, didn't he?
He had it a draw.
But because he had it 7-4. Yeah, he had him up by 2 rounds going into the last 2 rounds, and then he gave those to Delakian.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell Kevin Kelly was watching. I really don't. I mean, because what I saw was Delakian controlling distance, landing more punches, certainly landing the cleaner shots, and it looked as if it was his fight. I mean, the ring generalship was there. Valoria looked like an older guy. He kept following, but he wasn't doing much. And every once in a while, when he could get a shot in, he did. But when he had Delakian hurt, he just didn't follow up like he would have in his prime. And I figured his kind of one punch at a time thing, wouldn't work against a guy like Delakian. And also Delakian was able to smother Valoria's work pretty well. He would duck under. The point deduction, I didn't really see it as that egregious of a foul. So I wasn't quite sure about the point deductions itself, but he won clearly. Kevin Kelly
thought they should take like 10 points away from him if you listen to him.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think they were watching the fight as so much as they were paying attention to the.
Do you think maybe this just verifies how hard Prince Nassim Hamed hit?
I think so. I do think Kevin is still feeling the after effects of those bombs at 126. That was a great fight, by the way. But yeah, Kelly, I don't know what the hell he was watching.
All right, John, what was your take on Delakian?
Well, Delakian, some of the sites did have him just a very slight underdog going in. Going to have to disagree with Jeremiah on this one. I wasn't impressed with Delakian at all. I thought he clearly won the fight. I agree. I don't know what Kevin Kelly was watching. I think it's a problem with all sports. We've over 30. I could go on a whole another podcast on this, but you go back probably 35, 40 years. We've always had ex-players, ex-boxers involved in commentary, but I think it's gotten worse over the decades where you just throw anybody on who used to be involved in the ring or in the sport, and it seems like a good idea, and people can't even express, they can't even articulate ideas properly a lot of the time. This is in all sports. So, the idea is communication. It's a communication medium. Television, now, of course, used to be radio as well. Radio, not what it used to be, but we have podcasts now. You got to be able to express yourself. If you can't analyze and you can't express a coherent thought from your analysis, you really shouldn't be doing it. And, I'm not just picking on Kevin Kelly alone. I say that in football, baseball, all sports. And I think it's just lazy talent selection by the producers that do this stuff. But getting back to the fight, I wasn't that impressed with Delakian. You had a Brian Valoria in there who just couldn't pull the trigger anymore, 37-year-old flyweight. And Delakian's 30 years old. He looked awkward in there to me. And he did hit Valoria with an elbow right in the head in the 11th round, gave him a horrible gash, and literally you could just staggering him with it. And the referee didn't even catch it, didn't warn him, didn't do anything about it. I don't see Delakian, really going anywhere. And when I say that, of course you mean it for the true top of the division, like the ring rankings or the transnational rankings, because you got to make that clear when I make a statement, or any of the three of us make a statement on the podcast. When I say not going anywhere, I don't mean the guy doesn't, keep picking. He may pick up in this era. He may pick up a bunch of alphabet belts, and then somebody's going to say, "See, he was a 3-time world champion." I'm talking about being at the very top of the division, or true top 5 guys.
Well, let me go this way with you, John. We watched Donnie Nietes tonight, have a TKO 7 round. What do you think Nietes against Dalakian would produce?
I think it probably produced a lot of sleep for me. I was with the I was with the Mexican crowd that was booing Nietes. I didn't like the HBO commentators tried to justify it. That kind of stuff gets on my nerves. Like the people don't know what they're watching. They knew what they were watching. They were watching a boring fight until Nietes caught this Reveco guy finally with a good shot at the end of the round, and then stopped them. I mean, it was a nice knockout. I'm not going to criticize him for that, but he's a 35-year-old flyweight who has fought a lot of nondescript opposition over the years. He's had a very good record, but if you look at his opponents, even some of his boosters have talked about, there's not much on the resume there in terms of who he's actually fought. So, Revco was he was ranked in the rankings again. With 17 divisions, these things get watered down. I think we keep beating that drum, but I think it has to be beaten because I think people don't understand that how watered down a lot of these divisions are when you're ranking 17 at the upper level, and that's why sometimes you get some of these strange fights and results. I mean, this fight, like a boring fight, and then you get a knockout, but the knockout was good, but other than the knockout, I'm not clamoring to see more of a 35-year-old Nietes, even though he's had a solid career, over there in Asia, but against a lot of nondescript opposition.
But John, does he beat Dalakian? What do you think of that fight? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I mean, really, right. But you're right. Seeing both of them tonight, if you have the handicap, but I mean, you might have Dalakian be a younger guy, but even 30 is old for a flyweight, and he's 30. He might move his hands more. I mean, if Nietes can't catch him, I mean, he might be able to. I suppose theoretically he might be able to steal a sloppy, boring decision.
I was just going to say, I mean, I'm looking at the flyweights, and again, you're right. It's all watered down, and it's unfortunate. But Nietes is top 3 from what I gather everywhere, and the only person I think that is above him is Daigo Haiga of Japan, and I'm not saying Dalakian beats either one. Haiga's looked pretty damn good in recent years. Nietes he's a consummate professional. Again, maybe not the most exciting style, but he's just a consummate professional. No holding, just louder movement, boxing nicely. I think there's a chance for Dalakian. I'm not saying he wins the flyweight crown, but I think there's potential.
Again, like we're saying, with 17 divisions ranked, even though flyweight is the traditional division, with a lot of the way the promoters are going nowadays, and then newer fans, not yourself, of course, but a lot of newer fans who then they're just calling them by the weight numbers, instead of the traditional classes. We have flyweight, bantamweight, featherweight, etc. They're talking about 115s and 108s and 105s. Why I mention that is then it gets so watered down that you're right. So even though flyweight's a traditional division, if nobody happens to be there at that time, I mean, maybe Dalakian can get up there, but I wasn't impressed with his talent level.
All right, guys, that brings us to the World Super Series. Callum Smith beats Nicky Holskin, whatever the hell his name is. Beats him by unanimous decision, 117-111, 117-111, 118-110. I know you liked Smith coming in to win this tournament. What was your take on his performance today, John?
No, I thought it was an abysmal performance, despite the shutout. Basically, Smith's not going to be what I thought he might be. I'll say that already. Just over the last 2 fights, it's not there. He looks to me like he's going to be more like he'd be lucky if he'll be a Von Zell Johnson before his career's done. After now, what I've seen the last 2 fights, compared to what I was hoping for him, with I thought compared to a lot of European types and Brits, you're stereotyping there. They're not all like that, but a lot of them, I thought, with his size, he was punching hard against the no-hoper types, he'd been facing, earlier in his career. Looked like he had a lot of power. That power is not, he did drop Skoglund, but you just, the Holtzkin guy who was on 5 days notice, you could see by the end of the fight really wasn't afraid of Smith's power.
If they would have fought to a conclusion and it would have went 40 rounds, Holtzkin would have whipped his ass. I was impressed by the guy. Technically, he's not a boxer. I mean, he's swinging punches wide and everything. But that dude, took a ton of punishment, and he kept coming forward. And, hell, he looked more ready to go to a 13th round than Smith did.
Smith he's got the long jab, but now he reminds you. That's why I was trying to think of guys like, going way back into the memory bank. And I thought of, Von Zell Johnson, who got knocked out by Michael Spinks. Just a tall guy who's not a puncher, who is lanky, and you want him to be like a Thomas Hearns or a Bob Foster, but he's not. That type of guy.
And the thing I noticed was Holtzkin was the aggressor coming forward, and it really just looked to me like Smith can't fight going backwards.
And just like Holtzkin, though, to me was one of those guys. And on 5 days' notice, when he's a kickboxer, you can't really blame him. But he was in that. I see that once in a while. He was in that kind of stepping forward survival mode where, he's stepping forward, but he's not going to throw anything. Then it's like all of a sudden he got around to like the 10th, 11th round. He's like, hey, you know what? Callum Smith really can't punch. He's really not that great.
Yeah, if there was a rematch, this might be a close fight, John.
Yeah, he started throwing his wild kickboxer punches, the last 2 rounds, and caught Smith a few times, and Smith was lurching backward, and I'm going to stay with him since I picked him from the beginning of the tournament, and I think I can justify it in frankly what would be a very boring fight probably. Maybe he's 6'3", and George Groves is about 5'11". Maybe he just sticks out the jab for 12 boring rounds and steal some kind of split decision or something like that. I think that might still happen.
Yeah, but
this is where I'm going to get back to the 17. I just want one for a second. The 17 weight class thing is why I got to explain that, because now the Ring and Transnational have Groves number 1, and I'm not going to make a big deal arguing about that. Hey, if that's consensus, but the point is that division now's got no depth, and so you say, oh, George Groves is number 1 in that with a vacant title, but who's in there, from top to bottom? Nobody. That's not many guys that are that good. I think, after these last couple fights, David Benavidez has got to be extremely encouraged, and even though Gilberto Ramirez is not spectacular, I don't think he's got anybody to fear in there either. So except maybe Benavidez, but the division just doesn't have the depth.
Yeah, I think Smith's going to have a hard time beating Groves, just because of the fact that Groves has been in with a lot better competition than Smith has.
I agree. There's no doubt. Now I have to adjust on what I see that this.
And I'm not counting Chris Eubank on that, by the way. I'm counting Carl Froch and Badu Jack.
Yeah, right, exactly. That's what I was kind of saying on Twitter, was that over these last few fights, the Brits may have gained a number 168 pounder in George Groves, but they lost 2 who were going to be any kind of factor.
Yeah, because let's face it, from what I saw today, Chris Eubank may beat Calum Smith.
I wouldn't go that far.
I would, because I think it's a shit fight either way.
I think Smith looked like a guy who at least can fight. Eubank looked like a guy who, on this level, can't fight. So that was the difference there. Smith didn't look like a guy who can fight great on this level, but Eubank just looked like a guy that couldn't fight last week.
All right, Jeremiah, Calum Smith.
Yeah. What level is that? It's with the Holzum level. I don't know. I really wasn't all that impressed either. I mean, he had a nice steady left jab. That's about what you can say for him. He's all the Smith brothers have that tight guard that they use, and it can be effective. We've seen guys with that style use it, to a great degree in the past. But the problem is Smith he just doesn't look like a real good fighter. So it just looks as if somebody who's going to give him good lateral movement or come right at him or just have a high work rate, maybe they're going to beat him. He's lacking something there. I mean, I was kind of in the camp with John. I mean, I was playing the weight game, but I was not only did I like his length, but I was a big fan of his body punching. But that just doesn't seem to be as good as I initially thought it would be either. And it's a bit unfortunate because I was kind of hoping for a good Smith performance. I was hoping he would get him out of there in 5-6 rounds. Hype up the main event for the WBSS a little bit more. We could all look forward to it. But yeah, right now it's going to be a big domestic showdown in the UK. But I've got to favor Groves there just because he's got the more experience. I'm not quite sure how Caleb Smith's going to handle that sort of lateral movement. And frankly, I'm not quite sure his jab is as good as Groves. But yeah, it was the jab for Smith that was really his best weapon. Holzem looked like a kickboxer. He was a little too square. His head movement wasn't very good. His technique wasn't very good. He threw punches. He threw punches like he could also throw kicks. So he wasn't getting his body behind the shots like he was supposed to. But, at least we got a main event. It should be an interesting fight. But, yeah, just not a particularly impressive performance by the Brit.
Well, we got Liam Smith now has been announced on the last day as set to challenge WBO champion Saddam Ali also.
Ooh, well, Liam he might turn out to be the best of the brothers. I mean, he did beat Liam Williams twice, not in, real convincing fashion, but, that's a step in the right direction. But Smith Ali, that's an interesting fight. Smith is a tough guy. He can crack a little bit. He's got good body punching, but Ali is probably the more talented of the two. But, with Ali's chin, it's hard to say.
Yeah.
If Ali's chin holds up, he should take him, but you never know with Ali's chin.
Yeah, and it also looks like, from what I heard today, that James DeGale and Caleb Truax will be fighting a rematch also here in a few months, which should be an interesting fight also. I think the question there is DeGale just over the hill or not?
Yeah, DeGale's close to done, I'll say that. He may be done. Does whatever he has left, is it enough to beat Truax in a rematch? I don't know. We'll have to see where the fight's going to be held as well.
Oh, we know where the fight's going to be held, John.
It's going to be Britain, baby.
Yeah, I think it's going to be set up, though. It's going to be in Britain. But Truax might be able to win that one again. The Gale might just be done. But we'll see as it gets closer to fight time.
Yeah, and I think the question with Truax in this is how much better is he after winning the title? Because, they always, a lot of guys all of a sudden become a lot better fighters overnight. So maybe that'll happen also. Do we have any boxing news we want to discuss, Jeremiah?
I really haven't seen much besides the whole, Golovkin, Golovkin Canelo finalization on the, I believe it's going to
Vegas.
Las Vegas. Yeah, I mean, I really haven't seen a whole lot lately. I did see that David Lemieux might fight Gary O'Sullivan on the Canelo Golovkin undercard, and I think that's a pretty good styles matchup. I actually think that's a fun one, and I'm hoping that they stick with that. I'm hoping they can finalize it. Besides that, though, I just haven't seen a whole lot. Josh Taylor, the highly touted Scottish prospect. He's now fighting Winston Campos, because Humberto Soto got an injury. Taylor looks real good, but I just haven't seen a whole lot.
John?
One thing I was wondering, this hasn't been talked about. That it's been talked about a little, but it could quote unquote be the type of thing that saves boxing a bit, which would be, PBC's kind of shrunk back to Showtime, but I don't think they've given up on this, which would be, they're probably only outfit, or affiliation that has enough fighters to do this, and it's something that would be good for boxing, which would be, something along the lines like the UFC contract they have with Fox, which theirs up for renewal, and they're going to get a lot less money apparently. But in other words, also, but then in another way, like baseball too, like In other words, baseball's ratings haven't been good in recent years, but they've been saved by regional TV money, not even a national contract anymore. Regional, in other words, the Dodgers are on a regional network, the Yankees are on Yes. That's where all the money's coming from. Those regional networks need programming. Why I'm mentioning this is that, PBC, I think they're the only outfit that has a roster deep enough to even try it, where they would basically provide them with a lot of fights. Like a lot of fights would be on, every month or every week, and then they get a big, giant lump sum like the UFC's got, or baseball gets from the regional contracts. I don't know if they'll be able to pull it off, but I had heard that like a year ago, and then I was hearing a little bit of that lately, and they've got enough fighters to do it. But that would be the type of thing that could really help boxing if with their depth, that they put some decent matchups on regularly like that. So I think that might be one of the only things left that might be able to be a turnaround, because then you could maybe avoid those fiefdoms because they've got enough fighters to do it themselves.
All right. I want to announce to everybody that Sunday night, 9 o'clock Eastern, that will be basically tonight at 9 Eastern, we will be back to preview the fight me and John have been looking forward to for a while, of course, Sullivan Barrera versus Dimitri Bivol.
That is one of my favorite fights of the year.
You know what? That may be my most interesting fight of the weekend, including the heavyweight fight.
Yeah, I really hate that these are two that I care about up very highly as to what's been signed for this year. They're in my near the top of my list.
Yeah, and they're going to put them against each other. Great night. Programming for boxing, huh?
It's bad enough when they do it, but when they do it with these two, that is really a damn
You're
shame.
breaking John's heart.
Yeah, because these are two of my favorite fights of the year. So I can't believe how people are counting out Sullivan Barrera. I mean, Bivol, I'm not going to say it's impossible. I mean, he's been good enough where, could he turn out to be like a Kovalev or a Golovkin type guy? He might, but I'm not sold on that yet at all. And Sullivan Barrera has been very good. I got him as my number 2 light heavyweight after Kovalev, so I think Kovalev and him are 1-2. But Bivol's a solid favorite. The odds makers know what they're doing. All of a sudden, Sullivan Barrera seems to have slid into a B-side type of a role, and I just don't see that despite his age and that he gets dropped. I mean, I just think he's too good of a fighter, and I think that he sees something in Bivol because he turned more money down that he would have gotten to fight Kovalev on March 3rd. So
yeah,
Sullivan Barrera himself sees something there. I think but we're going to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think the hype precedes some of these Eastern European fighters. And as big of a fan as I am, a lot of these guys, I mean, everybody knows that I like Lomachenko, I like Golovkin, et cetera, et cetera. Some of these people need to pump the brakes. I mean, I'm sure both of you have seen, on some of the things that I've posted on social media, some of these guys are, they're talking about how, Andre Ward retired to avoid Artur Beterbiev and stuff like that.
I know, I saw it.
No, that's not happening. And then you look at Beterbiev's performance against I can't even remember the
Colling.
Colling.
Colling
right?
was a terrible performance.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that Beterbiev can't turn out to be a damn good fighter, but you can't act like he's the boogeyman, and then he goes and struggles for 12 rounds with Colling, and then you're still riding the line that Ward's avoiding him. And Bivol too. I'm excited for Bivol because he's a young Eastern European fighter. I mean, technically, I think he's from Turkmenistan or something, but he lived in Russia. I'm not quite sure the background story there. Or maybe he's from maybe it's Kazakhstan. I know it's one of the southern old USSR countries. But yeah, with Bivol, I'm excited because he's young, so he made the step up quicker, whereas a lot of these guys like Gvozdyk and Usyk and Lomachenko, I mean, they're all either 30 or close to it. But Bivol, just take it easy, I mean, the only thing his biggest win is against Trent Broadhurst. Broadhurst is a good fighter, but, that's not enough to be like, these guys are fantastic. Just take it easy.
Yeah, if he kicks Barrera's ass, then you can talk like that.
Oh, yeah, especially if he stops.
This is right. This is one exactly. If he does that to Barrera, And I like to project too. I like to go on the eye test. And Bivol looks good, but I'm with Jeremiah all the way. With Bivol, he's a little mechanical to me. I can't see where Sullivan Barrera becomes a B-side. Now, if he blows out Sullivan Barrera, then we'll put him right at the top. But we got to see that.
All right, but tonight at 9:00 Eastern, we will have the Deontay Wilder Luis Ortiz preview with all the other fights next weekend. Actually, there's some really good fights next weekend, and we're going to have a special guest on the show with us. We're going to have former heavyweight title contender, fought George Foreman in 1997, lost a close decision. Lou Savarese will be on with us to break down the fight. The interesting thing about Lou is he is actually a promoter, and he's got a couple guys that have sparred with Deontay Wilder. So we'll get his take on the fights next weekend. So that should be fun. And then me and John promise to be good and not argue at all tomorrow night. Right, John?
That's right. And one thing we can agree on first, I want to get in tonight before we get to argue later tonight, is that I am going to start a campaign that the World Boxing Super Series Ali Trophy should be renamed the Murray Sutherland Trophy, because I cannot take anymore that tournament is going to be the winner is going to be handed the Ali Trophy after that.
I think it's all right at the cruiserweight division.
The cruiserweight division. See, notice I didn't mention that yet, but that's still somewhat bothersome. But the super middleweight.
Yeah, but I think the cruiserweight are the two best cruiserweights fighting. So the winner, that's the cruiserweight champion. You can give them an Ali trophy, but George Groves and Callum Smith, no disrespect, but I just don't see where that is a big fight. It's not to me. I like George Groves. I think he's a good fighter. I don't think he's going to have much problems with Callum Smith. And I'm sorry, if you're in England, I don't mean to offend anybody, but the way he spells his name is Callum, or it's Calum.
Well, you know what I think they should do is they should rename the trophies.
Pablo Baez Trophy.
Yeah. No,
I almost went the whole show without bringing up Pablo. God, we got to watch that.
How did we almost forget that?
One of you guys has got to text me when I get that deep into it. We're getting ready to wrap it up.
Mike, the Pablo Baez Trophy is for that WBC welterweight tournament that got announced this week.
Oh, yeah, the one that Holyfield's doing with Real Deal Promotions?
Yeah, that's the Pablo Baez.
That's like either that or that's like the CBI in college basketball. The teams that don't make the NCAA make the NIT. The teams that are like 500 or below 500 that can draw 300 people to the game, they get to play in the CBI, which is the College Basketball Invitational Tournament. And nobody gives a shit about that, just like nobody gives a shit about this welterweight tournament, which is why I haven't brought it up.
Well, yeah, I mean, the WBC isn't particularly good at making tournaments anyways. I remember when they said they were going to make a tournament for their welterweight belt, and then they just let Danny Garcia and Robert Guerrero fight for the vacant belt.
Right.
Well, they just went straight to the championship game.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know many. Well, yeah, with Robert Guerrero as if he earned it. Yeah, I don't know many tournaments that start with the championship and then work their way back. But what I think that they should do is they should rename the trophies to fit. More. I think more. Yeah, exactly. More appropriate.
The Evander Holyfield Trophy at cruiserweight.
Exactly. But since this is a British domestic bout and it's not the best versus the best, maybe they could just do the Carl Froch Trophy. I'm sure Froch
that's a shot at Carl Froch.
Froch's ego would love that one.
How about the Joe Bugner Trophy, even though he was a heavyweight? The Tony Simpson Award.
I like Tony Simpson.
I do too. But y'all ripped on somebody. I like Carl Froch.
I do too, but he's still got an ego.
Yeah, but he was also pretty damn good.
That's true.
Yeah, he was. He was. That's where you don't need all these divisions, but then more guys happen to be at 168 that were good at that time, and guys weren't in the traditional division like I would always like to see them. But then that's completely flipped now. So you've got light heavyweight division being the best in light heavyweight's the best in boxing to me from top to bottom.
I think it's safe to say that the super middleweight tournament Showtime did a few years back was a lot better than the one that was just done.
There are better guys in there, yeah.
Yeah, a lot better guys.
Was when Because those guys, if you would have been in 8 divisions, those, again, the way it fell at that time, those guys would have been top 10 light heavyweights. So that's what you don't have now.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Remember, you can catch us at 9:00 tonight. Luis Ortiz, who will be the heavyweight champion this time next week, will be fighting Deontay Wilder. I'm not going to give my prediction yet. You'll have to listen tonight to see.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's a mystery.
Yeah, it is.
It's actually later. It's actually later today, right? It's actually later today, so you don't have to wait that long.
I know. So we're like, well, no, I mean, when he wins, it'll be next week at this time. So next week at this time, John probably won't even take the call for the show, but we'll see. All right, guys. I want to remind everybody to tune in tonight at 9:00 Eastern. Lou Savary, former heavyweight title contender, will be on the show with us to discuss next weekend's fights. Go to thegruelingtruth.net. Check out mybookie.ag. Click on the banner there. So that's about it. Remember, you can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher. Wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for John Einreinhofer, Jeremiah Preisser, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.